Hey everybody, I am here with Martin Hejnfelt. How you doing, man?
Hey, fine. How about you? Hot?
Good. So I'm very curious. Did I get your name right? Because I'm notoriously bad at that.
Yeah, it is a funny name, but Martin Hejnfelt. Yeah, so I guess that was pretty close, wasn't it?
Yeah, awesome, great. Because I try really hard, but I usually fail. And also, it's very crazy to me how many times I've said this in interviews. But cheers, my friend. Nice to finally meet you. We've
Yeah,
been
cheers.
talking for a long time, and
Yeah, we
first
did.
time actually hanging out. Um,
Yeah, we did.
what are you drinking?
It's actually a local beer. It's Wilhelm Pilsner,
Ah, okay.
made by. It's because I bought a draft beer keg thing. So, and the guy that I bought or that buy the beer from started making his own beer. So I bought a can of that or whatever you call it when it's 20 liters.
Oh, awesome. I tried to look for beer from Denmark and couldn't find any in the local store. What a shock. They do sometimes have it. So I figured I'd be funny and I got Old Brown Dog American Ale, which
Oh yeah,
Old Brown Bear would have been a little more accurate, but I thought that was funny enough and I like brown ales. So,
yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah. This is just a pilsner thing with a hoppy taste, I think.
cool. Yeah,
It's
any
great.
excuse to taste a good beer, I'm always in. So it's pretty
You
cool.
couldn't find Carlsberg or Tuborg or stuff like that. I thought they were everywhere.
They usually do. So I've talked about this before, but New York, the entire state, they don't sell beer in the same stores that they sell wine and liquor in, which doesn't make
Okay.
any sense at all because every other state does. So when you're in a place like New York City where everything's a specialty shop, you could find nice wines and weird liquors and all my weird absinthes that I like to drink, but it's really hard to find good beer because
Huh.
there's only one or two beer stores and thousands of wine stores. So you basically are just limited to whatever you have at your local bodega or supermarket. And the supermarket near me has a decent choice. I've gotten Carlsberg from there a bunch of times, but this was
Okay.
the
Yeah.
most interesting thing they had today. Old
Old
Brown
brown
Dog.
dog.
It's actually yummy. I like it. And it's 6.5% alcohol. So I won't be wasted by the end of this, but I won't be sober.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. This is just standard pilsner stuff
Nice.
for the alcohol. That is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lesson very hard learned. If anybody wants to try different beers around the world, check the alcohol content if you're going for specialty beers. Because a friend of mine's a beer fan, a big drinker, and we went to this place when I used to live in Stamford, Connecticut, walking distance, so we didn't have to worry about driving or any of that. But we were, when I say drunk after 6 beers, we were drunk. And we're good drinkers. Like, we could hold our alcohol. We had a meal, and this was over a couple hours. It's not like we chugged 6 beers, but we stood up and we were shocked. And the bartender
Belgian
kind of
stuff.
smiles and said, do you remember how much alcohol content is in the beer that you ordered? I warned you. And the bartender did. They're like, oh, it's a high alcohol content. I thought they meant 6. Well, no, what is it? It was 11%.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, so we
Yeah.
basically had over 8 beers or almost 12 beers each pretty much. Yeah. So that was a hangover and a half the next morning.
Was that Belgian beers? I heard that every Belgian beer below 10% is a light beer.
I believe it. I absolutely believe it. So yeah, now I'm careful with that. Now I look for which are the darkest. And then out of those, I look at the alcohol content and I pick the ones with the highest alcohol first so it doesn't sneak up on me later in the day.
Oh yeah. Okay. I like it light. It's because I've gotten old. I think.
Yeah.
There you have it. I drank a lot of brown beers and dark beers when I was younger, but yeah, we just want to keep it cool nowadays. Actually, now we're talking about beers, and you're talking about New York. You in New York, right?
Yep, right
Because
in
I
the
was
city.
in the state of New York, which I guess it's the same, but in the other at the end at the waterfall. What's it called? Buffalo, I think, or something like that.
Oh, which waterfall? Are you talking Niagara Falls all the
Niagara,
way?
yeah, Niagara
Okay.
Falls.
Yeah.
I think isn't the city called Buffalo or something like that
I think so. I've
near.
actually never been to Niagara Falls. But.
Whatever. But I was not there. I was there on a work trip, and the guy who had to drive me around, our guy in the states, he had 3 hours or something like that every, going back and forth. So he picked me up, and then because he had 3 hours going home, he had to leave me at the hotel quite early. And when you're alone in a hotel, you have nothing to do but go taste all the beers they had at the bar, and they had a really good bar, and they had a lot of beer. So I was shit faced around, four in the afternoon. That was nice. And some, I don't know, Great Lakes beer. I think it's some Chicago stuff or whatever it is. I don't know where the Great Lakes are. Aren't they around Chicago?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean
Yeah, there we
they're
go.
huge, so there's actually a whole bunch of states all around those. But yeah,
Oh, there we
it's
go.
near Chicago too is one of them.
Okay, but the Great Lakes beer, that was awesome, but it was strong, and I got
Yeah.
shit faced. That was nice.
Yeah, isn't it funny when you travel for work how you just end up doing things that you normally never would? Like for me, the thought of just going to a bar by myself and sitting locally, I'd feel like a loser because I'm lucky enough to have friends. So why wouldn't I just call them? Like, but if I'm traveling for work, like I couldn't care less. I'd grab a book or my cell phone, sit at the end of the bar, drink till I was bored, and then just never even think about it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is what I do every time when I'm traveling with my company or for my company. I always end up sitting in the bar looking lonely and just either get shit faced. And then you American people are really good at coming over and just small talking with me and or with anyone actually, and it always gets very funny. Because you meet a lot of different people that I will never see. And because I'm often there for many days, so I see the same guys coming back from their work wherever they are, and then you start meeting people and actually get to know people. Of course, for only a couple of days, and then you leave for good, and you never see these guys again. But hey, it's funny. That's a
Yeah,
good thing about America,
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
interesting. I like that. It's funny too because depending on where you go, most places are exactly like what you described. But I'd been to some manufacturing facilities out in the middle of nowhere, and it's the
Hmm.
opposite. You sit down at the bar, and half the locals go, "Who's the stranger? He doesn't belong
Yeah.
here. Why is he there?" And I'm just like, "Yo, man, I'm a fat nerd that just wants to drink your beer and eat your food. Leave me alone. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna." So
Yeah, I don't know how if locals are that. I've been a lot of local places, but what I've experienced, they're usually cool.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny too to hear the stereotypes of different places in America. Like Jason from Game Tech was always like, "What's New York like? I just imagine everybody's just an asshole yelling at you." And I'm like, "No, it's people are generally nice unless you do something like you're walking in the sidewalk and you stop to look at your phone or look up at a building, and then you'll probably get run over by a person walking. That's like the
Oh,
only
okay.
thing cuz people it's like driving, right? Like you wouldn't just stop your car in the middle of a highway to go look at something, and if you have 100 people walking behind you trying to get to work, you don't stop in the middle of the sidewalk, but if you're used to living out in the middle of nowhere, why would you even think about that? There's nobody
Yeah.
behind you. You can just stop and look around. So, yeah.
Hey, this is a movie or going to New York 101. We're getting through here.
Yep. Yeah. You'll have a hard time finding beer and don't stop short when you walk.
Yeah.
That's my best advice.
Yeah, I've actually been to New York one, and that was not that long after the 11th of September.
Mm.
And when we went there, because we saw Manhattan, and it was just wow, this big thing. Denmark is pretty small, so Manhattan is big. And when we went there and we were going around, and then suddenly there was a bomb threat, and they had to close off the whole street because some guy had left a box or whatever in a food store right across the street from our hotel. So we were like, and then we were allowed to go to the hotel and sleep. And it's like, yeah, this is cozy, knowing that maybe there's something on the other side of the street. There was nothing. Apparently, just a guy who had forgotten this box or bag or whatever it was. But that was what I know from New York. But it's a cool place. It was cool. It was a cool place, except for the
Yeah.
bomb threats and whatever. It was fun.
I mean, while that's not part of the day to day life, that's a perfectly fair story.
Yeah. Well,
It's,
going to New York, get a bomb threat, see a movie at the theaters. Hey, everyday life.
love it. Do you live in closer to the city or closer to like the suburbs outside?
The problem is, what do you call a city? Because I live in the third largest city of Denmark, which is 200,000 people, I think, 220,000 people or something like that. And I live in the outskirts of that city. So, but the problem is that the outskirts of that city is, I don't know, what are we across 10 kilometers? And I have no idea what that is in miles or whatever you call it, feet, something. But it's the third largest city of Denmark. But compared to you guys' cities, it's a small village, I would call it. Big buildings and stuff like that. We do have something, but it's still flat. It's a flat city. But
So
I live in the outskirts of the third largest city of Denmark.
I'm imagining like the suburbs of Chicago, and since I don't know what your town looks like, and you don't know what that looks like, we're gonna have some friends send pictures of or post pictures on Imgur of both and compare and contrast.
Yeah, I was actually in Chicago some years ago, but I just remembered, being looking something like yeah, also quite tall, but still, or was that Philadelphia? I can't remember now. Whatever.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I wanted to ask you here, not just to talk about beer and hang out, but we're definitely going to
Yeah.
be doing a lot of that. But I, first and foremost, have to thank you for all of the work you've been putting in behind the scenes in the retro gaming world. RetroRGB, since about its first year, I decided like it has to be focused on the people who create these things, the developers behind it, the products, and all that stuff. Because very often, and I mean this respectfully, but very often people just see who's in front of the camera when, more times than not, the people who do the behind the scenes work are really who drive all of this. So thank you for absolutely all the cool crap that you've made and done and contributed to.
Well, thank you for showing it to the world. When I do stuff like this, it's mostly just for fun or for myself. And then when releasing it, getting it to the people, I don't do that. Just put it up on my website that nobody looks at, and then people have to Google them out to it, and usually making the right search words or whatever. So thank you for contributing to putting stuff out. That was also why when I made the first 129X, I was actually going to contact you, but you contacted me first, so there we go.
Yeah, that's a lot of people want to know how I end up talking to some developers, and most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, that question is positive. Sometimes it's always from people like, "Why aren't you talking about me? I do cool stuff. You need to talk about me." And it's just there's never any intent other than I saw you online, I saw what you were posting, and I went, that's really cool. I wonder if they know about this, and I wonder if I could help, and I wonder what else. And I just messaged you, and you were cool to talk to, and here we are, like 2 years later or something.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But it's really nice because when I do this and when I release it for free, it's always because I want to help. I've spent the time, so other people might as well get something out of it. And I know a lot of people must have the same issues I had, because the whole idea was that I bought these two PVM 9L2s without. I actually didn't buy them. I got them for free, and I saw that I had to buy this crazy ass expensive card which nobody had available. And there was this guy on eBay, and he wanted $150. It's like, wow, $150 for two cards, because I had two monitors, so I needed two cards. So then I thought I might be able to do this, and apparently I was. And then I spent $700 to actually save $300. So that I'm not a very good at math and economics, but
that is absolutely. You just described so many people's use cases right there. Like, all right, I don't want to spend this money on it, so I'm gonna buy a logic analyzer and an oscilloscope, and a couple
exactly.
grand worth of tools later, you solved your $100 problem.
Yep, this was exactly what happened. But again, now a lot of people have been using it. I can see how the sales are going of just the cards on eBay. So people must be needing these, which is very cool.
Yeah,
And so it helps people, and it makes some monitors do more than they were used to, which I think is cool.
yeah.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, like the price too, because when you first got into this, those cards were 120, 150, and now they've gotten even more expensive. And now
Yeah,
with part shortages of everything, the ones that we have to make to replace them are now the original price, and it's still half the price of the original. So
yeah,
problem
that's
solved.
whack. I have no idea why people still buy the original cards. Of course, there's something like it. It does look cooler, and I suppose it is more, authentic or whatever. But I've seen them go for something like 300, $400, which is whack in my opinion.
Yeah.
You can see buy the original $400 or buy this one at right now what 150, $115, whatever it is. And it's just crazy. I don't know why they do this. I don't like all this original stuff. At least I don't care.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
just want it to work.
some people just don't know the difference, and they don't bother. They go straight to eBay without Googling, which is a mistake, which I'm sure all of us have made at some point.
Of course.
And then there's also that stigma of, is the other one going to be as good? I want the original. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, that's both of the cards that I've been talking about in the past few weeks are better than the original in some ways, at least. So it's kind of, I understand the mentality, or I guess some people might just want to collect it, but there's not many freaks like me that like to collect monitor stuff. There's, it's a small
No, no.
percentage. So
Yeah, but I don't know. It's of course when it's in a project like this, I'm not a professional hardware developer, so of course, there had been some issues like with this with the low pass filter that I forgot to disable on the card and stuff like that, and then we figured that out, and hey, there we go. I could come crawling and say sorry, I fucked this up. Uh, but you can fix it like this, and then I guess people are happy, and the people that can't fix it themselves. Nah, of course that sucks. I don't know how big a problem it actually is.
Not
So,
at
but
all.
yeah,
But let's go back to the beginning then, and then we'll work our way back to this, just so
sure.
people who maybe haven't followed the project, or maybe they only saw my video from last year and didn't, so they need a refresher. But the 129X card, 129X is just a model number of a card that's compatible with the L series PVMs and the H series BVMs. So D9H, D14H, and it accepts component video and RGBS, so standard RGB like a BVM would be. And that's what you ended up reverse engineering. And how did you do that? What exactly does that entail? Because I know a lot of these cards require some kind of logic. Plus, you need to feed the signals. So, would you want to walk through a little bit of what the heck this is and how you're able to do it?
Yeah, sure. So the first part is more or less always getting some documentation if possible. And what I did was that I found the service manual for the card and just looked at it. What does this card actually, what does it have? And most of it, what I can see was just a switching circuit. It could just pass through the signals, the RGB signals in the sync, and there was some switching for the internal, external sync and stuff like that. And they had this microcontroller black box thing, which of course there's nothing documenting. It's just a microcontroller custom thing that they do and have made when they make the cards. The thing is that the bus or whatever you call it that goes to the and from the microcontroller is a known bus. It looks like something called SPI, which is a completely normal bus for internal stuff on systems like this. And with a logic analyzer, you can just hook it up, and then you can start looking. What's actually happening. It's the same thing that I did with the JVC, some of the JVC monitors, where the monitor itself is actually telling the microcontroller of the jungle IC that it should kill RGB because it's not needed or whatever. So if you want to hack RGB and you need to circumvent that, and that was just I2C or I square C, and SPI R square C, those are pretty simple buses. So hooking up a logic analyzer, I could just see what was the monitor sending and what was the card responding with, and then was just a matter of figuring out how was the protocol. When you press internal external sync, the monitor sends this command and the card responds with this, and then sets a signal high to make the routing of the signals a bit different, and that's about it. But yeah, it actually didn't take that long to go through it because the 29X is actually quite simple in the end. And I know I'm not even the only one that has been looking at stuff like this over the years. I was apparently just the first one to actually get out with it. But yeah, so you go through this, hook up the logic analyzer, just start pressing buttons until you get an idea of what is actually happening. Try to piece it together, and because Sony is always Sony, so they have some sort of hey, we do it like this, which nobody else does. So those are the quirks you need to figure out. And I spoke to some people on the CRT Discord. They had some ideas because Jam was also working on something like this,
Mm-hmm.
and I just suddenly oh, it might work like this, and it worked, and hey, there we go. And then the rest is more or less just putting something on board. I tried to simplify everything because there were some components that couldn't be found anymore. So that's why I ended up with this more simplistic and modern design, which of course it was easier and simpler to build, and it ended up being something that worked, and people like that. And then we started evolving into what we see today. I started building this with all the inputs and the outputs and the VGA, SCART, whatever. Because when you do have the microcontroller stuff, which is the important stuff, then you're flying. The rest is just signals.
Right. So just to clarify then, the 129X card, so the one specifically for the L series PVMs, let's just say, the RGBS signals, get passed through and have to be presented at the right voltages and everything, but the
Yeah,
signals just pass through. The microcontroller was to tell the monitor, hey, I'm here, and this is
yeah,
RGBS.
exactly. It does nothing to the signals. It only opens up, saying you should now pass these signals through, or you should not pass them through when you don't select the channel. And it was routing the sync signal from the Y or from the external sync input. That was basically it. So that was why in the end that signal or that card is actually quite simple. You can then see, of course, there's a lot of hardware on it still, but that is because when they made it, everything was just discrete transistor amplification stuff. At least as far as I can see, I'm no analog engineer at all, but it looked like that. And so whatever I built now was just, yeah, a simplified version. It has a buffer, it has a switch. That's it.
And just a random question, but the connectors that are at the
Sure.
end, those are mass-produced connectors. I had no idea what those were. I'd never seen them before, other than on these things.
Yeah, actually, it's a quite common connector. They used where I work, and we actually use something similar, just for another card. It's a quite common backplane connector, and it comes in all kinds of sizes and mechanical, how it looks mechanically. But the layouts are the same. It's just a normal, yeah, what do you call it, 2.54 millimeter pitch or zero point 0.1 inch millimeter pitch connector, which is, yeah, completely normal. It's another thing on other cards, like the 68X, which is a completely different.
I think that's the
But
one I was
more,
thinking of when I asked the question. I know we're talking about the 129X, but I think I was visualizing the other one when I asked that. So yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
because that's a completely different connector, and I've never seen anything like that anywhere else. It looks like some SCSI or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
SCSI
Mm-hmm.
thing, but I don't know. I think it's. I don't think there's any other producers doing that specific plug, but I'm not sure. I haven't been able to find it anywhere else. It's like this Japanese aviation electronics, whatever it is,
But I mean,
and
you were able to purchase them because the boards were made and everything. So
yeah. But for the 129X and more or less for any other cards like the JVC cards and also the what do you call them, the Evergreen BVM series, I also think they use completely normal uh, these 2.54 millimeter pitch plugs. And then there's the 68X, which is just completely whack.
hmm.
At least uses this whack plug.
And but that is at least still available to purchase, obviously. Then so
Yeah, it's a normal plug, and it's so apparently other people are using it also, or other companies must be using it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to purchase it like this. I think they used it because everything is more high speed in that card. I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it is just a completely different setup
yeah,
than the
we'll back up
129X.
for we'll back up for a second on that still because I did want to talk about the dual because
Yeah, sure.
that to me like reverse engineering the 129X. I tried to make a big deal about it because I understood the importance of that. It's the first step into doing these things with Sony monitors that no one had completed that project on a Sony monitor before, at least to the point
Mm,
where you could make one. I'm sure there was somebody in a basement
apparently,
somewhere soldering wires together that got it working,
yeah,
but like,
exactly.
made it into an actual product that people could use. And I thought it was awesome, but at the time that you made it, it wasn't $350 for a 129X. It was,
Mm,
it was still 150. So it was an important project, but it wasn't one that everybody was going to rush out to buy. But I kind of saw the groundwork being made and I kind of knew where you were going with this. And I think a very cool step was the dual because now that offers something that the original does not at all.
yeah,
First of all, you get the SCART input, which yeah, it's just a connector, but how many of us in retro gaming who have a setup that we're constantly changing has bought 3 or 4 SCART to BNC adapters over the years because they wear out and fall apart. So like it's not I'm not making fun of sellers, I'm not making fun of SCART, I'm not making fun of BNC. I'm just saying if you use this stuff a lot and you're constantly moving the wires around, they're going to wear out, whereas just a connector in the back of a monitor, you're good to go. That's going to last 10 times as long as everything.
yeah,
So
for sure. But well, because I'm from Europe, so we have SCART everywhere, and so actually SCART was the my original what I wanted to do. But I started out with BNC because everybody had I made SCART first, people were going, no, why do you do SCART and chart and whatever. So, but I thought, hey, let's just do it with BNC. Then everybody's happy to start with, and then we can just take it from there. And yeah, so
I
this is
definitely
where,
think that was the right move too, by the way, because just, it also wouldn't scare people off. Here's a copy of the original, homebrew, open source. It does everything the original
yeah.
does. Don't be freaked out by it. It's the same. But the other part that was awesome was the sync combiner and the VGA thing and all of that. And I know a lot of people said they wished that, maybe not a lot of people, most people were just really appreciative of it, but a few people had said, it would have been cool to program the different buttons on the PVM to select the different inputs, VGA or SCART. But then that starts talking about a different level of logic analyzing, and also,
Yeah, but
but there's only one RGBS pass through, right?
yes, the whatever you press on the buttons are except for internal external sync, and that it is selected or not is the only thing I do have. I don't have any information that you can see A and B, although it must exist, because on the what's it called, the HD version 124 or 142, whatever it is, HD, I think there's two inputs, so it must have something like that. But when it detects 129x, it just sends, you're not good to go, send me the signal. So I can't really do more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we opted for this, just one button in the back that you have to press to select one or the other. There's, at least I haven't found any other version or any other command that I could use instead
Right.
to do something like that.
Because on the BVMs, the cards that support more are composite and S-Video or different types of SDI. So you're not using 4 RGBS pins. You're using different pins, or you're still populating 4, but it's a different signal. So it's not like there's 2 sets of RGBS pins going to the motherboard. So you might not even have been able to do it even if you did have the software on it.
No, on the on the other ones, if you had the option of somewhere the monitor must be telling the card that you should now take the signal from these plugs instead of these plugs. So of course, had something like that existed for the 129X, then we could have used that. But because we're trying to be the 129X, we don't have these signals. You could say, of course, theoretically, trying to be one of the other cards, because everything ends up in analog videos on the backplane. There's of course the way of saying, hey, I'm actually a 124 HD, and then A and B, but then you would be doing something completely else. Most likely you would only support component or something like that, because I think it transcodes to, or not transcode, it decodes to component in the end, and then you really can't do as much stuff as you can with the 129X. Sony is very clever. They seem to say, this kind of card does this and that's it, and the 68X is completely different. It's wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
As much of a nerd as I am, and I always try to see what we could do next and what other features, I would never in a million years say, it's a fair question, by the way, to the people who ask those questions about the option buttons. Totally fair question, but knowing what it would take to get to the next step, pushing a button in front versus reaching your hand around and pushing a button on the back, I would tell you, don't ever waste your time on that.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next project. Like, good explanation, fair question, but yeah, just for giving the reach around to an input button, I would not waste any time in that at all.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The other features are still available, because all of the things like calibration, geometry, centering, that's built into the monitor, not the card. So As long as you tell it, hi, I'm a 129X and this is an RGB or a component signal, whatever it is, then you could do the rest. Actually, you don't even. The monitor, you select RGB or component. So you're not losing any functionality whatsoever. It's the same manipulation that you could do with the original.
Yeah, exactly. This is, some people, I saw some people saying that, why didn't I implement this in an FPGA or whatever? But there's no reason. It doesn't make any sense, because it is doing nothing at all to the signal except actually switching it in and out. So putting in an FPGA would just make it more expensive. It wouldn't change anything. It's a microcontroller on the original. It's a microcontroller on mine. That's it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm very excited about that, and everybody that I talked to about it. And maybe I didn't do the greatest job in the video or something, because I just talked to somebody this morning who I was like, oh, did you see the monitor video I did? And they were like, oh, no, not really. And I explained, like, hey, you could I know you have an L series, you could turn that into, 3 different things all at the same time. And I was like,
Mm.
Holy shit, really? I'm gonna go back and watch that video now. So yeah, it's I always thought that was a pretty big deal, and I'm very happy that it's out there. And the sellers now, for anybody, I'll leave links, of course, but Castlemania is selling it, and also Retro Up. What's Will's store again? I'm sorry, Will.
Retro
Retro
upgrades, I think.
Upgrades. Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't want to say it until I was sure. My bad, Will. Sorry, but yeah, Will's store, Retro Upgrades is, and Will is also selling the single versions. So in almost all cases, I would recommend people get the dual just because it's extra functionality. But if you have a setup where you're only using component video, grab the BNC version and some cheap, some cheap adapters. Or if you're only using D-Sub, then you could save some cash by buying the singles. I just think most people who have a multi-sync monitor would use everything they could do. Treat it like a VGA monitor, treat it like an RGB monitor, throw every signal you want into it. So
Sure, actually, in my opinion, only the full size BNC and the dual should exist in the end, because the single ones they are a bit harder to put in because of because the card is not full size, so you have to like wiggle it a bit, and you just having the full size is just easier. So for sure, I would think those are the two main products, and the singles are more or less just the what do you call it? They were the road to the dual in the end, because I wanted a SCART, so I made a SCART, and then some people, hey, why don't you have the VGA? So I made the VGA, and then, hey, why don't we put this together on one board, make it a full size, everybody's happy, with some
yeah,
switches.
yeah, that was kind of funny because you had sent me. I forgot there's a SCART version too that Will's selling as well for anybody that just wants SCART, which I think some people might just go for the single SCART version if they have nothing else but a SCART switch going into that. That's actually, if you have automated setup with all SCART and all component, and you just want to have both plugged into your L series PVM, that would work. But
Mm.
that was kind of why I verbally abused you into starting the duel because you had sent me both cards and I'd popped the panels off the back of my L series, my 20L5, and I went, this is awesome. I'm sure port 1 is option A and port 2 is option B.
Oh, yeah,
And I
yeah.
popped the back off and I went, there's only one connector. What the
Yeah,
hell?
yeah.
Hey, you want to put both of these on the same?
Yeah. I actually didn't even know that, but it was the same on the L2. I also thought when I got the monitor, hey, there's room for two. There's not. So
Yeah.
so that sucked actually. But I use more or less SCART for everything here. So having a SCART version was actually my goal in the end. So yeah, that's that.
Very cool. So we worked on a bunch of other projects that aren't quite ready yet. So we'll save that for our follow up interview when I find myself some of your local beer to drink instead of this stuff. But so let's move over to the 68X because that
Yeah.
is something I've had a few people over the years take a look at that and tell me unequivocally that is impossible and you shouldn't waste your time on it. And the only thing you might be able to do is buy things like the SDI version and then tap the signals for RGB and kind of basically RGB mod it the way you would a TV. And everybody kind of said, you can't do it. It's just don't waste your time. Other people have tried and you did it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you want to just kind of walk us through all of it,
Yeah.
like what, and by the way, I think I should take this time too to say that Steve from RetroTech posted about a 68X going up for sale, and I saw that immediately. I'm subscribed to him on Patreon. I got the email right away, and I saw it turned out after the fact to be a gamer from Brazil who knew all of us, and just put it up there because they had an extra one, or was able to acquire it. And I contacted two different people that I knew always said things like, if there's ever anything you need that would be a big help to the retro gaming community, let me know. And I contacted them both and I let them know about this. And both people said, I'll buy it for you. And I said, well, listen, I don't want to put undue pressure on Martin. If I buy this, I'm going to send it to him. And I need to respectfully tell you that there's an excellent chance that you've just thrown your money away and this really is impossible. People said it's impossible, or it might take 3 years or something. And both of them were like, doesn't matter. I understand what this means for everybody who likes monitors. And they ended up just splitting it. They each sent me some cash. I paid for the thing. I had it drop shipped to you. And we all, like, even the other day, actually, I think this morning, one of the two people asked, like, hey, what's the status on that? And I just said, wait another week. I don't want to spoil it. So like, because we're recording this before that video comes out and everything, but so I just wanted to give a shout out to first of all everybody in the retro gaming community who's awesome. I love all of you, and specifically to these two people who just stepped up to the plate, just putting their trust in all of us, saying like, nah, like Bob wouldn't lie about this, and Martin's already proven himself. I'll throw down the cash and see what happens. So
That's pretty awesome.
yeah, so thank you.
So yeah, yes, thank you, because that project was actually kind of wild. It for me at least, because although we had written to each other before about that, what happened to begin with, what that one a guy I know in Denmark here, he found two well, you know what are they called, A20 FM F1 blah, blah, something, and then he told me, because he also knew that I had been making the JVC cards and this 129X. And then he said he wanted to offer me one of these monitors only with the SDI card in. And then you say, maybe you can use that for something. And I was like, hey, yeah, that's to begin with. So actually I got that, and I started making some measuring out the signals, and I started tapping the, the bus, just like with the 129X, hook up my logic analyzer, except I had to buy a new logic analyzer, which had more channels. So it was more expensive, blah, blah, blah. And so I hooked that up, and I got some information off of it, and there was just a ton of information going through those monitors and going through those cards. And I was like, wow, if I'm ever going to do this, I think I would need the original card. I was thinking that. Then suddenly you write me up, yo, no, do you actually have a monitor? I was like, hey, yeah. I said, okay, I'm going to send you this card. I was like, really? I was actually sitting with my family having dinner when you wrote me, and it's like my wife was like, "Why are you texting all of a sudden?" It's like, this guy he wants to send me a card that's crazy expensive. And I was like, nah. I said, nah. so I was just sitting there writing, being complete, yeah, just eat your food. I'll just do this instead. And then when it took like 1.5 months for the card to actually arrive, and I guess the guy who sold the card, I think he was like biting his nails, all the time, what actually happened. And then when it arrived, and I hooked that up, and when you get a card like that, and you know what it costs, and I don't know, the card just has like this holy grail thing coming in the door, light shining on it. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then I had to
now
take
you're
it apart.
grounding yourself when you touch the top of the monitor. You don't need to ground yourself when you put it in. Yeah. You're just like, all right, let me just make sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I had to take it apart, and I was like really careful. And I tried to hook up, you can get like these small hooks that you put onto the ICs, so you don't have to solder anything on top of it. And it just didn't work. And the ones I had were too big, so I ordered some new ones from China that was like, oh, these are very, very fine pitch, blah, blah, blah. I bought those, cost a fortune, didn't work. And so I was like, okay, I have to solder onto this thing. So, I sat down with my iron, and it's like, because now I have to solder onto a $2,000 card or whatever it was it cost. It was a lot, and it's expensive, crazy expensive. And so just, find some good places, put on some wires, and then just shove everything into the monitor, boot it up, hook up the logic analyzer, and just see what happened. And then just got all this data coming in. And I was like, I'm never going to do this. I can't do this, because there's just so much data onto it. And it's just like, oh. But I took some time on and off, just spending some time with all the data, just trying to sift through it. At one point, I was spending a whole night just trying to grouping it. I gave some parts I put that in red, and some other parts, hey, they look like the same, so also in red. And then I tried to sift through it, and it just went nowhere. And then suddenly, hey, wait a second, this means that, and this means that. Hey, there we go. And then it actually makes sense. And then everything was. Everything just like came together.
So I gotta stop and ask a very stupid question, but from
sure.
Start with the dumbest answer and move your way up. But what is a logic analyzer, and what are you actually seeing when you're looking at these signals?
Yeah, so a logic analyzer is a thing that you hook up to all the electrical signals, all the digital signals, or whatever you want to call them, that can be ones and zeros, and then you can just get a complete view of how are all the signals looking in time. So from when you press the button, some signals go high, some signals go low, blah 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 blah, and then you got all the ones and zeros coming backwards and forwards in the monitor, and that was the logic analyzer, the really fast version. But then you can see, when you're used to looking at electronics, then you can see that, okay, this bus has 8 lines, and 8 lines represent a 1 byte of data. So you can hook up, and then you know that a zero here means this, and a zero here means that, and then there's this control signal doing this, like putting this signal in. So you can just follow every data, every piece of data going forwards and backwards in the monitor. You can follow it with the logic analyzer, but you also get a lot of data. And so the hard part is, separating the I don't know what you say in English, separating the shit from the giggles or something like that, whatever you call it.
I've never heard that before, but I'm going to use it.
I was trying to translate something from Danish, and it doesn't work at all. And it's not even called like that in Danish. But trying to find out what actually matters and what doesn't. And that was definitely hard. The hard part, for the 129X, you only had a one single line going to that card, so you never had information from anything else that wasn't going to that card. So that was very easy, because I could just follow. Okay, this one, I know this is going to the card. But on the A series, it's just like one big array of data going to every card, also the power supply, also the ISR, also the deflection board. All that stuff is just in one big pile, and I had to figure out what was actually what, because I thought that all these data were coming to that one card, until I figured out that was actually all the data for all the monitor. So the whole thing was, the epiphany was to figure out that actually it's only these small pieces of data that go to the card, and the rest is going to the monitor, or not the monitor, the power supply, or whatever other card. So that was the epiphany, because when I figured that out, I could suddenly see that the amount of data I had to worry about was almost nothing, or at least very little. So that was the whole. That was the what do you call it? The silver bullet that made it happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that actually explains why anybody who have tried before thought it was impossible, because they thought that every single piece of data was coming from the card, and they didn't do what you did, and were able to realize, like, no, it's all of the card or all of the monitor's data. We only need a piece. That's really cool.
Yeah, so this was the idea, but actually the thing is, what I also figured out was that because with the SDI card, I tried doing that thing with only modding into it, and just trying to put I made this small board. I don't know if I showed it anywhere. A small board that I could put between the card and the monitor, so I could hook into all the lines, all the signal lines. So I tried doing that, and just injecting my own signal, disconnecting the RGB out, or the video signals from the original card, and just hooking myself in. But it didn't work at all. And you can't actually do that on these cards, because the card detects everything that's going through it, and then it tells the monitor, you will now be seeing a signal looking like this. And then it says, okay, there we go. And then it changes its whatever. I don't even know what it actually does inside. CRT minus is just still some sort of black magic. but it changes whatever it does to the deflection coils and blah blah blah, to be able to sync up to the whatever signal comes in. And so that means that if you don't tell it something, then it won't sync at all, because it doesn't know what it's getting. And the card, it hasn't told it something is actually coming in. So even though if you're hooking yourself in, you'd just be getting garbage, because the monitor doesn't regard it at all, because the card hasn't told it something is coming in.
So
and
is
that was
this
also,
like is it like the 129X in that the signals, the RGBS signals, get passed through, or do those get processed as well as?
In the original card, there's a lot of processing, and to be honest, I have no idea what all that processing does. It looks like there's a whole lot of electronics doing something. I don't know what. My guess is actually that most of it is some of this aperture stuff that I again have no idea what it actually is. Apparently, it should be sharpening it or something like that. But it seems to be something like that. And I have an idea, but I'm not quite sure that I don't know, in the Evergreen cards for the D series and stuff like that, the cards can share processing, so it can, or something like that. As far as I know, if you have one decoder card, you can actually use the inputs of another card to go and route it through that decoder or something like that. And I'm unsure if that is what they tried to do on this card also, but it just never amounted to anything, because everything went digital at the time. This is pure speculation. I actually have no idea if it's correct or not. But yeah, the card did a lot of processing. But in the end, if you look at the 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 cleanest path of the signals, it is still more or less routing just the signals through and then doing some processing on the sync to be able to, say, oh, this signal is this and this resolution and stuff like that. And then it tells that to the monitor, which then sets itself up. And so this was the hard part for me because I had to uh, come up with some logic to do all this stuff. And I really don't know that much about synchronization signals and whatnot because the 129X, I just passed it on, let the monitor deal with it. And there we go. On this one, I had to actually go in, analyze the line count, blah, 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 and say, okay, if there's this many lines, then it must be this type of signal, blah, 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 and then pass that information on to the monitor.
So that's pretty interesting. So that is a good explanation as to why the original monitor or the original 68X card has so many sync issues and this one doesn't. Because that's the thing that I show tons of B-roll, whatever you want to call it, in the video of how the original 68X or the 129X on an H series BVM act identically in that they don't process sync correctly from most sources. And I think this is speculation, but it's rooted in it might be fact, let's just say. And I think the reason is that by the time that these monitors started to get released, the main focus in broadcast stations and in movie calibrations was no longer VCRs, which have crazy sync potential issues and all that stuff. It was DVD players and anything in HD, 480p, 720p, 1080i. So they removed all the functionality that allows you to clean up sync from things like a VCR, which is also the same thing you would need to clean up sync from old video game consoles, because generally up until this point CRTs never cared. You send it an image, it'll sync up to it, you're fine. I'm oversimplifying. If Displaced Gamers is listening, I'm sorry, go listen to their videos because totally different. But so that would explain the reason why, but or the general concept of why, I guess. But the one thing that was both awesome and confusing is, why did the 68X replacement that you designed solve every sync issue that I threw at it, except the H series monitors still have it? Is it simply because all of the sync is being processed on the monitor, just like the rest of the controls for geometry, and whereas on the 68X it was being processed on the board?
For sure, the sync is being processed by the board itself, by the card itself. But I think what actually happened was that I just didn't do it like Sony did, because I just did the simplest way at all. And that was, for me, it was actually because that was the most obvious way. Tried to simplify it as much as possible. So I just did it the simplest way. I took a normal sync combiner, or not sync combiner, a sync splitter or separator, whatever we call it. Put that in because on the card and into the monitor, everything is RGB HV, or discrete sync signals. So I needed those signals anyway. And those are also the signals that I use to process and figure out what is the resolution and stuff like that. But what also caught me as a surprise was that everything actually worked right out of the box, and I didn't do anything to actually combat these issues. I just plugged it in. It's just like, whoa, hey, everything works. Wow. And and then I tried all the whatever I could try here, master system and whatnot, and just everything just worked. So why does that work when Sony's doesn't? To be honest, I really have no idea. For sure, there is something also on some of the how it calculates the refresh rates and stuff. And the best, I think I wrote that on my webpage also, or at least I've said it at different times or multiple times, that this Dodonpachi, or I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but Dodonpachi, so. The arcade core on Mister, which runs like 57.2 hertz or something like that. And if you put that into the original, it doesn't sync at all, but the OSD is stable. But on my card, it syncs correctly, but the OSD rolls around because apparently the card or the monitor tries to put out the OSD at 60 hertz, which doesn't fit the 57 point whatnot hertz. And on the original card, it apparently ends up being 50 hertz. It thinks it's 50 hertz, and then it just so the OSD is stable, but the image scrolls because the image isn't 50 hertz or something like that. It's really whack. It is a whack card and a whack monitor. There's some fun right there for sure. But yeah, I can't tell you why it actually works better, because in the end I actually didn't do anything to to fix it.
Glad you got
It
lucky
just
on
worked.
that one. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so on the 129X, that outputs RGBS to the monitor, and on the
Yes.
68X, it outputs RGB HV to the monitor, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that could be part of the. I'm not smart enough to understand why, but I am to understand the concept, and that could be why there's no more sync issues, because you're just sending it RGBS, splitting the S to HV, and then
Hmm.
so those horizontal sync slices that cause the issues when in the RGBS signal are getting separated anyway. So that could very well just be a very oversimplified explanation. If Steve's listening to this, which he's probably not, but if he is, he's
Yeah.
probably rolling his eyes like, "Oh, Bob, don't repeat the things that I told you. You don't know what you're talking about." But
Yeah, but it might be, and I remember when at some point we sat down and looked at some of these signals, especially from the master system, and the problems I thought were the problems seemingly weren't the problems. At least if you looked at the signals, raw, but it still looks like crap on the original card, and I really can't tell you why, because my guess is that it must be the sync separation circuit of that card that, for some reason, does not accept whatever it is that is weird in some or in some machines' sync circuits. I really don't know. This would take more time to analyze, which of course could be fun to do at some point. But it's right now there's a board that seems to be working very good for what I would imagine most people need, which is RGBS in 240p.
hmm. um so speaking of 240p and resolutions, now the 68X card, do you need to buffer the signals through a THS 7374 video amp, like the 129X card?
Yeah, I do that, but it's again, the original card does the same. It buffers the signal and it switches it on and off. And then there's also a switch that takes the sync signal to the sync separating circuit from either the Y signal or from the S input. So there's a buffer, sure. Yeah.
So when I tested the original 129X card, I tested obviously 240p, 480i, and 480p, and all worked perfect. And I don't remember if I ever tested 720p, because while it's a use case that I understand, it's not a use case that I use a lot, because in my personal opinion, by the time you get to 720p, it looks fine on a flat panel monitor anyway. So
Yeah.
I didn't realize that everything looked good, but 720p was kind of blurry, and that was just a basic low pass filter issue. And it's one of the many
Yeah.
reasons why I tell everybody, unless you understand what you're doing, don't use a low pass filter, or just use one, and don't use a sync stripper. Now, when I say don't use a low pass filter, I mean in your mods, in your scalers and everything else. But that's why, generally speaking, if somebody says, "Oh, I got a Super Nintendo, do I enable the low pass filter on that?" Almost all cases, no, because your scaler is going to handle it. There's something else in the chain that's going to do it. It's really only if you're going direct from that to analog. And this is one of the
Mm.
weird things that could happen if you do it, if you do it wrong in the wrong setup. So it's kind of funny that was
Forgetting to do it.
yeah.
Yeah, if you get to disable the low pass filter, so I can assure you that I have remembered to disable the low pass filter. Because the funny part is that on the first board I hadn't, on the first prototype, because I had just taken that straight off the 129X, so with the same error, and it's just like, oh god, I need to get this right this time for sure
Yeah,
to begin
and
with.
just to be clear to everybody, if you bought one of the duals, none of those have this at all. And in fact, you even discovered a voltage issue on VGA. Like, none of that is an issue. From the time you're hearing this, if you bought a dual, I think Will sold a handful maybe, but nothing, no problems here. If you bought a dual, you're fine. If you bought the 68X replacement, you're fine. It's only the original single BNC, single SCART, or single VGA that all you need to do is cut a little trace and then move a pin over. I think you have instructions on your website to how to do that. And the
Yeah,
only time it matters is 720p to the original card. It does not. 480p looks perfect. 480i, 240p, all perfect. I guess 1080i
Yeah.
as well, but I still don't understand why people would ever use 1080i in a monitor. There's always
Ah,
somebody that has
okay.
an explanation as to why that's a good idea, and I never agree with it. But
Yeah,
so yeah,
sure.
it's only
But actually,
720p.
all the GitHub repos I have should have been. I should have fixed all the layouts now, so none of them should have it. If you're building your own,
Hmm.
to the people out there who are building their own, it should be fixed. But again, also to all the people out there who are building their own, you should always use the GitHub repositories, because I put all some Gerber files or whatever they're called around in different projects. You should never use those. They're also outdated. Use the GitHub repos, because they should be current.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that was just a funny thing because you asked me about that, and I tested it, and at first I'm like, who's using 720p on these things? And I guess
Yeah,
maybe I guess there's a few things I could think of, but I just like fine. I know I don't. I tested it. It worked. Like you asked me to test all resolutions, so does 1080i. But when I went back
yeah.
and actually did the side by side, I was like, oh, that is a little blurrier. And then I was able to do the mod fairly easily because that's what I would do with the old G-SCART switches. They've been out of production for like 5 years, but it was the same thing. It was a double filter. So if you're
Yeah.
blowing that up to a 4K TV, then your filter on your console and the filter in the G-SCART and the filter in your OSSC, if you had all three on at the same time, it wouldn't be as sharp as without it. So I just turned it off, and so it was a very I don't want to say it was a very easy mod because if you've never done SMD soldering, it could be
Yeah.
scary, but it's not
It's
hard,
small.
and most people won't need to do it at all. I would say the use case for these is 99.9%, 15 and 31 kilohertz only. So
Yeah. But still, it was funny, because when you wrote me that, hey, this looks kind of blurry, you have messed something up, and I was like, the problem was that when I made the SCART, or when I made the card, I was like, I gotta remember to take, kill this low pass filter. But apparently, I had done it wrong. I didn't even bother to read the datasheet. I just did it like I thought it was,
well, that's because
and
it
then
defaults to on. I don't think they should. I don't know what the use case for that chip is, but it defaults to on. So even if you
yeah,
forget to tie it high, then you just leave it floating or something, which you're not even supposed to do that. But it's always on unless you tie it to voltage. Correct?
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that at least. And I tied it to ground, so I actually forced it on, because I really love low pass filtering apparently. But I just remember, I was lying in my bed thinking, because like, why is this happening? Because I knew I turned it off, and we had just talked about it. I was just like, wait a second, how do you turn that low pass filter on? And then I, jumped out of the bed, and my wife was going like, hey, what? It's 2 in the morning. It's like I just got to check something, down to my office, pull up a car, and it's like, damn.
I
I
remember
did it the
talking to
wrong
you
way.
that night too, and I remember, saying goodbye, and then like an hour later, I get a message from you, and the first thing I think of is, isn't it like 2 o'clock in the morning there? And
Yeah.
you're like, holy shit, I just found this. I'm like, how shitty are those moments, man? I had the worst one I've ever had was. We had this rollout of computers, and the customer said, "Hey, we can't install. The Wi-Fi isn't working." And I'm like, what the, like that? How is that possible? I designed the embedded image. I half designed the hardware. Like, come on. So I was on another customer meeting. I get on a plane in San Francisco, and I almost always took the red eyes. So that way I would get on the plane at night, fall asleep, sleep on the plane, go to work the next morning. But I had such a grueling month that I was like, I'm going to be lazy and take like the 9 a.m. flight. I could read some books, I could listen to music, take a nap, land in the afternoon. The wheels come up. Like the plane turns, and so even if I wanted to try to sneak internet service or something, I was already too high off the ground, and it hit me. Like, I know what the problem is. And it's the company changed a part on us, and it's a locked image, so it wasn't able to reinstall the driver, and that's why Wi-Fi didn't work. And then I had to sit on the plane for 5.5 hours, hating
Knowing.
myself, just going, oh, it was totally my mistake. It was I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
believe that I didn't check that when I knew I should have. Oh, it was the
Exactly.
worst feeling. So yeah, at the very least, you got to jump out of bed, double check it, and no, you get to go back to sleep. Like, okay, and I had to sit there on that flight like, I have to tell a customer that I fucked everything up for this rollout because I didn't want to be late, and I didn't stop production, and I just what are they going to concentrate on? Are they going to be happy that I didn't delay the rollout? Or are they going to want me fired because I luckily they were just like, we don't care, just fix it and shut up, right? I'm like, all right, no
Yeah.
problem. But yeah, so yeah,
As long
that's
as you can fix it, it's usually good. As long as you can just tell. But
as long as you could fix it and not charge us. That's
yeah,
all they cared about. So
yeah, exactly. But it was actually writing the. I wrote it on Facebook and on different media like, I'm sorry, I fucked up with this low pass filter. Please, you gotta fix it if you want to. But again, I actually think it isn't a big problem because most people are not using this stuff for this,
yeah.
720p. But apparently some are, of course, and of course they should fix it if they
But
want to.
more importantly, there's zero safety issue. Zero. It's not like if you
Of
don't
course,
fix it, your monitor is going to explode. It's the
no,
same
no, no.
voltage. So zero safety issue. Only a sharpness issue in 720p. So
Yeah,
of all the things, it's a very light one. But I just had to laugh about that because I have had so many of those moments in my life, and that one in the plane was the worst because I was just like, I can't. Just to stew in your own shittiness
yeah.
for 5.5 hours in a tube, 30,000 feet, smelling somebody's nasty breath and feet behind you. Just like it was not the best
Oh,
flight. Not the best flight.
that's debugging.
Yeah,
Always the fun stuff.
right? So overall, though, the 68X blown away by performance. The version that's out now is interesting because we are in an unprecedented part shortage, and we're at a spot where it's like you've completed it, it's working, it's tested and working. We tested 720p. Like it's everything, everything's there, but to make them is very expensive because of the part shortage. And there's also some features I know you and I wanted to play with that it's just like, let's get this first run out so people with A series monitors could actually use them now and
Yeah,
not have to
yeah.
worry about this. So I would say to anybody buying one now, there's nothing wrong. There just might be more. It might be cheaper in the future, or there might be more features or something. But if you're just looking for RGBS and component video input, it runs perfect. But it was rough because of the part shortage. Didn't you have to swap out one of the major parts in it?
Yeah, actually, the thing is, when you're sitting with something like this, and I just wanted to get it out there, but then suddenly this part shortage was happening, and it's just killing everybody. The whole electronics industry is in dismay or whatever you would call it. And then I was just like, hey, I gotta build. Let me try to build some of this. Parts can't be sold. You can't find the parts. No parts, not in stock, not in stock. And it's just like, what? And so it's like, okay. So I made I changed a couple of the parts, and while I was doing that, the parts that I changed to went out of stock.
Oh,
And
no.
so it's just like, oh, really? And then the problem is, right now it seems like that is what happens. Stuff goes out of stock as you are redesigning. So I've kind of like say, okay, for now this is how it looks, and production seems to be possible. If people want to build their own, I think it's close to impossible right now because you either have to source the parts by some really shady places. I have no idea if they will take your credit card number and buy stuff in Russia or whatever they'll do with that number. But I would be wary buying in some of these places saying, yeah, we have stock of everything. Sure you do.
Yeah.
And and so that, but it's crazy, and there's really nothing to do about it. I just saw on Twitter the guy who was working on this one of the N64 HDMI things, what Borty something. He was like, he was writing, hey, I just found a couple of these FPGAs. There's Digi at DigiKey, and then 6 days later they were all out. It's just like, well, this is how it is right now. And he got a couple, and it's just like, that's how it is right now. As soon as you find it, you should just buy everything, because if I'm gonna wait till tomorrow, it's gone. And it's a travesty. So because I would really like to try to cost optimize these boards, but I can't because I can't find the components.
Yeah.
So there's really not much to do. So right now the FPGA that's on it is just like really big and much too big for what's needed, but it was the one that was actually obtainable.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm gonna make a guess here. We could all gauge if my perception on the internet is correct or not. But it is July 11th in the afternoon. I'm not drinking beer in the morning. I only reserve that for Jimmy Hoppa and soccer. But The 129X dual video is already out, and it's getting really good feedback. Everybody loves the idea of it. The 68X video hasn't even been shot yet, but the script's done and the B-roll footage is shot, so I should finish that in a day or two. My guess is that everybody who owns an A series without a card is going to buy one and absolutely appreciate it. And I don't know what the final price is. It's definitely going to be under $300, but I think everybody that owns an A series right now is going to go, it's only 300 compared to 3,000, and you don't have the sync issues, and it's a part shortage, but they're still able to be made. All right, maybe there's going to be a more feature-filled version next year, but who cares? I am buying this right now, and I love this. And there's going to be other people with some level-headed opinions like, oh, I can't quite afford that right now. I'll wait till next year. Totally fair, 100% fair. But I guarantee there's also going to be people that are like, that price is outrageous. Hey, this feature doesn't work as well as I had hoped. Everything works fine I'm just saying, and my guess is that any of the trolls that we're going to see about this don't own an A series, never planned on buying one, and have no stock in this other than they want to be the person that everybody like, oh yeah, you're right, you're so smart and articulate, thank you for your trolling comment, why don't I yeah. So I have a feeling any negative feedback is only going to be non-A series owners. Not like we're some elitist bunch that's smarter. It's just if you own something that is this close to being awesome, and somebody hands you over something, the ability to complete that, then it's just like, okay, I know what the alternative is. Thank you for not waiting a year and a half until the part shortage is over, just because you don't want to hear the trolls tell you how expensive it is. So
and this is the whole idea of this project, because as I see it, the A series right up, or more up until now, has been close to useless. And I've seen people, find, hey, I got this monitor, and then they show, on Facebook and some of these CRT groups, they show an A series, and then people go like, yeah, but do you have the 29X? And they're like, but what's that? Yeah, you're gonna shell out a lot of dough on this. And they go, oh, really? And then they sell off the monitor for $50 or something like this, which, by apparently in America, I can see these prices are completely whack. In Denmark, it's not that bad yet, but you see these monitors just go because people can't use them. They can't do what they want to because nobody uses SDI. And if you're lucky, you can get the 61D, which is also becoming increasingly hard to get, because that was, at least up until now, the only option you had.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can actually have all these monitors, and apparently there are a lot out there, but people, I know they're still in use actually some places, but people have just never regarded them as useful because this card is so rare. The original card is so rare.
Right. So up until now, so the tubes that are in the A series are interchangeable with the tubes that are in the D series. And when I had lost my job a couple years ago and I'd sold everything off, one of the things I had to sell was an A series with about 3,000 hours on it. So it was a brand new tube. It was mint, and I regret selling it, but the people that bought it seemed awesome, so that's always a plus in my opinion. But the specific use that they were going to do, I had the 61D, I think you said, is the composite in S-Video card.
Yeah, exactly.
I had that with it, and they had a D20 as well at home with a worn tube, and it was so worn that you just kind of knew, like this isn't the best experience. I probably should be using a consumer TV. And they bought the A series from me, and they swapped everything over. They swapped the tubes, they disassembled, and what they ended up with was a D series that could do 480p, all of the multi-format stuff that you want, with a tube that had 3,000 hours on it. And then they ended up with an A series, which was now still a really amazing composite video and S-Video monitor, even with the worn tube. So up until now, if you had the skills to do that, cool, but you'd still have to find a D series and an A series, and then you'd have to spend. And they said it took forever, and it wasn't even that they hadn't done it before, because of course if they do it again, everything's going to go smoother. It's just you have to unbolt everything in order to do that. So
I don't think I would ever go. I have never tried doing a tube swap. It just seems like a really big job in my head.
I know exactly what would happen. I would get halfway through it and I would go, hey Jose, what are you doing next week? Oh, that poor bastard. I've hired him to do some insane repair work for me, and he always comes through. So cheers
Uh,
to you. But yeah, I don't think I'd be able to finish it myself because I'd run into something. A connector doesn't look right. If you haven't done it, anytime you haven't done something before, whenever there's a bump in the road, it's a big deal. Whereas if you've done a few of something, it's like, oh no, I know what that is. Turn it upside down, twist the wires together, you're good to go. So
yeah, do magic.
yeah. Whereas this, it's the opposite. Do you know how to plug a card into a slot and turn on a monitor? Then you've now installed your 68X replacement card. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So this is definitely, and this was, what I really wanted to do. Can we really now help a completely new, more or less, generation of monitors actually being useful? And it seems like it is,
yeah.
and it will be, because again, I think actually most people are going to use RGBS 240p, no sync issues. This is what people want, and this is what it does really good. Improve on the original.
Yeah, I mean, 720p and 1080i do work through it,
Yeah,
but
sure.
the fact that you now have a multi-format monitor, so the fact that you could play your PlayStation 2 and it looks great in 480i on a CRT, you don't have to worry about motion adaptive deinterlacing, everything's
Yeah,
fine. And then you throw in your PS2 game that's 480p enabled, you press a button, and your monitor just switches into 480p mode and you're good to go. Worst case scenario, you got to adjust some brightness. Best case scenario, you're not going to do anything, and it just like that. There's something to be said for that. And if you're a CRT freak like I am, you might think, oh, well, when I play games in 480p, I prefer the look of this shadow mask tube on this style monitor. Yeah, that's fair if you're crazy like I am. If you're just a normal gamer who loves retro, having a multi-format monitor that does everything is such a really cool bonus. And so yeah, obviously I'm gushing over it because I love that stuff. And I'm also biased because living in New York City, having one monitor that could do everything versus like a stack of monitors is a huge deal here. If I ever get to move to the burbs, I'm going to build a CRT wall just to show off everything that I could do, but I did in one monitor back in New York.
yeah.
So
When the space allows it.
So another question that people have been asking, which
Sure.
my response to them has been a polite version of, why don't you shut the fuck up and be appreciative for what we got today? We'll deal with that tomorrow. But I will ask the question anyway, and I will be the asshole in this situation. Because you've already done the A series, something very complicated, and because you've done the 129X, something not easy, but certainly not as complicated. What does this look like for other series of the monitors, like the D series, for example, or the E and the F, which does get tricky because most series have their own cards that are not compatible with each other. But the fact that, is this something like, and answer me like I'm stupid, because in this case I kind of am. Is this something like, oh, I've already done the A, so I could port the code over to the D and the E and the F series in a day and it's no big deal? Or do you have to start from scratch for each one of these others? Okay.
Scratch. It will be completely from scratch. At least, although they look somewhat the same to some degree, but I'm pretty sure that there's nothing that actually is the same. So it would be starting from scratch. Again, I would need to have the hardware. To plug everything up, start soldering onto cards and see what happens. But as far as I do know, many of these cards comes with a lot of discrete components, and again, this whole switching and routing signals through other card stuff would be something that I would have to look into. But I don't even know, is there a shortage of these cards? I do have an old, what do you call, BVM 14G1E or something like that. Which has some cards in it, but I've actually rarely used it. It just sits in my shed, along with a bunch of other monitors that I've bought over the years. But yeah, it would be a completely new project for sure.
So it would be my very strong opinion that you do not waste your time on that today, because right now you could get parts for all of these, and yeah, all parts for everything are going up in price, but if you have to spend $300 or $400 on an input card that is available for a monitor you already own, That's way different than spending $2,500, $3,000 on a card that you have to wait 6 months before one even pops up on eBay. So
Yeah,
totally different scenario. So maybe someday, and you open source all of your stuff. So anybody with the patience and a logic analyzer and some knowledge could try to follow your lead and do that for the
sure, yeah.
rest of these. But as far as you personally, I would like to request that you spend your time on other stuff that we need your help for, and not something that would be cool but not needed today. Maybe 5 years from now, there's going to be a shortage, and we'll all be calling, Batman Martin to fly in and save us again.
And do stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, again, the biggest problem is always that I need the hardware, and I have, I have a house, but I don't have space, and I also have a wife that already thinks that because I was doing this project in our dining room or whatever you call it, and she was like, "What's that big monitor doing there?" It's like I'm doing a project on it. Yeah, okay, but for how long is that gonna sit there? Not that long. 6 months later, it has been sitting there, and I've been moving it forward and backwards. We're having guests over. That monitor is not sitting there while we're having guests over. Okay, Martin takes everything away because I was using an A20. It is a big monitor. That is
yeah.
a big monitor, and and it's not a pretty monitor. Or at least the wife doesn't like to. It looks like a big block of cement, and so I had to take that forward and backwards, breaking my back. And so this is the problem when you're doing these reverse engineers. You usually need the hardware, and if I can't get the hardware, then it's kind of shit out of luck because people, because I've been doing some of these JVC mods where you put an Arduino in and you do some magic with the Jungle ICs. People always often write me, "Hey, can you do?" and then insert some weird ass TV that doesn't work, and it's like, no, I can't really. It's not that I don't want to, but I don't have the TV, and so I can't do it. You have to do your magic. You have to try yourself, and because it's not like what I'm doing is any kind. It's not it's not magic. It's a common way that if you want to listen into some hardware, figure out what does it do, and it's the same thing when I debug hardware at work. I need to find out what's wrong. Then you put logic analyzers on, see is my signals actually doing what I expect them to do. So it is more or less the same. And but if you don't have the hardware, then everything is just pure guesswork.
And do you use a logic analyzer for your day job?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
All right, so
You,
that's your familiarity with it. Then that's how you're able to get that
yeah,
that skill
yeah, for
set.
sure. But it is, but so yeah, so I've been using it at my day job, but in the end, I've never used it on my day job as I've used it here before, because on my day job usually a couple of channels, that's it. But when you have to listen into a complete bus and all kinds of signals, the whole backplane of the A series, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo going on there. So
Yeah.
so that's it. The hardest hardware debugging I have been doing in my life, I guess, is actually this card, because
Wow.
it's the most. It's actually one of the most what do you call them, complex buses that I've been listening to with the logic analyzer,
Hmm.
for sure.
Now, look, all kidding aside, right? I made my sarcastic comment because I'm 3 beers deep and it's about 95 degrees in here, and I'm getting a little
Oh yeah,
burpy. But asking the question of hey, that's cool. Can you do this too? Depending on, well, I don't know about you, but depending on my mood, sometimes I'm like, hey, screw you, look what else. And other times I'm like, that's a fair question. And the right answer is that is a fair question, because you never know. So to all joking aside, if anybody didn't understand I was joking, you could try and just go on a website and cancel me if you'd like. But it's the truth is they're all good questions. But that is the fair answer, in that this is a tremendous amount of work. So maybe someday, if there's a shortage in input cards for the D series, or if there's something else that we need, that's something that maybe revisit. But I think your skill set would be better applied, just my opinion, but I think it would be better applied to other problems that no one else has solved yet, that you're already 3/4 of the way there. So that I think for input cards, maybe another version of this as the part shortage ends, cutting a version to cut cost and listen to people's feedback, see if they have
yeah,
any
sure.
features they want. I think that's totally plausible and something that you'd probably find fun doing anyway, but I
Mm.
wouldn't count on anything else in the short term. But you do have JVC monitor stuff that you sell or that you've made, right?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I use the JVC myself for everything. Sony monitors is kind of like a side thing. I don't use Sony monitors at all, except on my bench right here. There's a small what is it called? A PVM 945.
Is
or
that
something
because
like
you
that.
prefer the look of the shadow mask versus the aperture grill?
No, to be honest, no, because although that I do there's like a religious war about all that stuff, I just like my CRT, and I use this 19-inch JVC, which was the first Pro monitor that I got, and the reason that I got it was that there was a guy selling two, and then I found this guide on the web. This is how you can make an RGB card. And I was like, and they didn't have RGB, so I was like, hey, I can do this. So I bought it, made the card, put it into KiCad, and the electronics program that I use to design them. Made a card. Hey, there we go. I now have two monitors with RGB that just work very good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just been sitting as my daily driver. Actually, I don't game that much at all, so it just sits looking cool, along with all the consoles that I don't use. But it's
I know the feeling.
yeah, but it's there. But yeah, so I've done that. But actually, just quickly going back with can you do like this? When I did the 129X at the time, I had a bunch of people writing me, and you can also see that on Reddit and other places where I go like, and they ask me, "Hey, have you been looking into the 68X?" And I'm going like, "No, and I won't do it, and you can't do it, and blah blah, and won't be me. I can't do that. I don't even want to look into it." And
And
then
then
suddenly,
some
hey, there we
fat
go. It actually
American
worked.
fuck was like, "Hey, Martin, can I send you one to play with?"
Yeah, exactly. But I was really like, I don't want to spend my time. It just looks so complex. I think your pictures that I saw on the internet where I can see the component count,
Mhm.
and it's just like, whoa, what does all this crap do? And I was like, it must be doing something, and otherwise they wouldn't put it there. It was my guess, and it does something. I just don't know what it is because I could just circumvent most of it and it actually worked better. But that's another thing. But yeah, so that's a fun thing. So even though people say something and you ask us to do something, I'll go like, no, I don't want to do that. Sometimes you end up doing it anyway, and yeah.
So for your JVC cards, to go back real quick though,
Mhm.
did those sound like they were closer to the 129X in that you pass the signals through, but then you just need to tell the monitor that there's a signal there, right?
Yeah. It's actually just you don't need. There's no controller or anything. It's like tying a couple of signals to lower height, kind of like enabling and disabling the low pass filter. So that's about it. And when you do that, the monitor goes like, "Hey, there's a card," and then it just selects it internally on the basically the JVC cards is just an RGB mod, more or less. You're just shoving
Right.
the signals in. There's really not much to it to the card. And again, on the guy who made the original tutorial or whatever to do it, shout out to that guy because hadn't he done that, I would have never bought these two monitors and actually tried starting out making these cards
And your
for
board
sure.
is you designed it, but it's the same as Jam's board because it's all just tie the signal high or low, add the RGB things and everything. And
Yeah.
Jam is LinuxBot 3000 on eBay. I don't know him that well, but every interaction I've ever had with him has been positive, so got nothing but good things to say about him.
Mm.
I got his card for mine actually, and it worked fine. And shout out to Andy from Brooklyn Video Games. He has one of the other ones. So, whichever one you have available to you is the right answer in that case. Yours is
Yeah,
open source. I think his is open source too. I
I
can't
think it is.
remember
Yeah.
because I think he open sources almost everything he does. I got a pile of. I always keep my guns next to me, ready to fire. I got a couple of his converters and stuff like that, and so yeah, it's just another cool person doing this stuff. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure to say that in a positive way because there's a lot of theft in retro gaming, and that's not at all what happened. It's just two people making the same thing. It's like exactly like Voltar's RGB mod and Bordy's RGB mod. They're both great. No one stole anything from each other. It is what it is. So yeah, just wanted to make sure to give Jam a shout out and let everybody know that his stuff's great too. So
And the cool thing about that, whatever he does, he actually produces it and sells it. I just put the stuff out there, and I hope for other people to do it because I really can't spend my time on this. But this is what I think is really cool when you do all this stuff and also make it available, which is also a big part of it because then not that many people actually want to be sitting down and soldering this stuff themselves.
yeah.
So they wanted to be able to. So even though you open source stuff, that's fine, but it is also very important that somebody actually takes the time to get it produced and actually get it out there, so to make it available. And actually, because I actually stole something from Jam because he uses the same board. I think it was he said. Yeah, I credited him on my silk screen
Mhm.
of my JVC board because he gave me that idea to have the same board for both SCART and BNC in the same design, which I thought was brilliant. And so at least when you steal off each other, make sure to credit each other. I think that's important in the.
In the YouTube world, one of the most respectful things you could do if you want to show footage of somebody else's channel, you do a screenshot of your web browser. So you're using their footage, but anybody watching can see the title of their video and the title of their channel. So that's where fair use really comes into play.
Sure,
In that, like,
exactly.
I would never in a million years call that theft. That is polite promotion and sharing. So you essentially did the same thing in the
Exactly.
card
Yeah.
world. So
But I just think it's important that when we do all this stuff and borrow from each other, or even open source or not,
yeah.
it's just important to give a shout out. And my JVC board isn't better than his or whatever, and I just put it out there for people to do. And
Yeah, and that's why I like working with people like Ryan from Castlemania or Adam
mm,
from Retro Gamer Stuff or Will from Retro Consoles. What's
retro
this?
upgrades.
Retro Upgrades. I'm sorry, Will. I'm sorry. Will from Retro Upgrades. Like they don't just make your stuff. They make your stuff and say, "Hey, this is the open source design from, and here's the link to." And
Mm,
I'm proud that I'm making these things for all of these amazing creators. Everybody wins. Like, people who just want
exactly.
to buy the stuff get to buy it. They get to make some cash. You get your work recognized. Like, I really appreciate people who take the time. And on the flip side, if you have the time to do it, thanks to Jam for designing, open sourcing, and making these. Like,
Yeah.
there's room
Sure.
for all of this stuff. Just play nice, children. Play nice. So, what do you think? Is there something that you have that you would want to talk publicly about that's next that you've been wanting to work on, or there's still just a bunch of circuits you're going back and forth with that maybe it'll work, maybe it won't?
Yeah, well, I still want to work a bit more on this 69X for sure, but then I actually wanted to work a bit on the BKM 15R, the remote control that you use for the A series, because that's also becoming scarce. So I wanted to try to look into the protocol that it uses. Maybe so the problem is that people might be getting the monitor, but they don't have the controller. And then what I wanted to do, this is purely in my head because I have spent zero time on it, but I wanted to, like, can I make like a small wireless thing that can sit in the back so you can control it from your phone? Something like that. That would be cool. And then we could get rid of all these, these expensive remotes, because I think a BKM 15R is going for like what? 1,500? No, not $1,500. Like
No.
what?
Like
$500 or
500.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
still a
still
lot of
500
money.
bucks.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, and you can't use the monitor without it. So even though you can say that the 69X is important, but the money or the remote makes it is also important in the
And
end.
for
So
anybody that doesn't have any of these BVMs, there's when we talk about remote control, it's like a long thin device with a bunch of buttons on it. Certain BVMs have it built right in, like the G series, I believe. And if they're not built in, they very oftenly oftenly. Wow, I can't even speak my own language. They very often came with the bracket, so they look integrated. The D series uses a serial, just a standard serial cable, but the A series uses a network cable, and you plug it into the ISR board, which is something that's also required to run these things. So it's not like you need to buy something else, but you could, on both the ISR board and the remote, you switch between direct connection or network. And if you put it in the ISR in network mode, just by flipping the switch, you should technically be able to connect that with the network cable to something that sends the same signals over a network. So that's interesting, and that has the potential to be a few weeks worth of work, and that also has the potential to be impossible.
of course it is.
Right, because maybe it's encrypted, maybe it's something else. So that's I'm glad you're looking into that, but respectfully, anybody listening, cross your fingers. But this could be a lot of work, or this could be just impossible. So
Yeah, I think that it's not encrypted, but that's based on how I think it works. And but the thing is, I think that there are more monitors than there are controllers. because I would imagine at least the broadcast studios, they have X number of monitors and then one or two remotes,
Yes.
and so then it's kind of like a natural thing that will be missing at some point is the remote controls.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to look into it again, because they will be scarce. I know that you can use the BKM 16R also instead, but then not all functions work. But of course, just as long as the basic stuff does, then I guess that's good enough. But and they're way cheaper. They're like $100, way cheaper. They're cheaper, and then they're like $100. But still, if we could get something that just worked, that would be really cool. So I wanted to look into that. And yeah, whatever projects I can stumble upon. Again, most of the stuff when I do it, it's actually because I have the need myself. Something that I'm missing, and I'm trying to see if I can build it. If it succeeds, then I might as well get it out there, because I'm not going to sell it anyway myself, at least not in any big quantities. So I might as well open source it. So anyone who wants to sell it or who wants to build it themselves might as well take it off. They don't have to spend the time doing it again. There's no reason. The whole open, this is, in my opinion, the whole open source, I don't know what you call it. The idea of it is that some guy has spent the time. You can use the same. Here you go. It's free for you.
That's awesome.
With no warranty, of course. So this is when if you make your own card and your monitor burns out, don't come asking for me.
But I mean, that's absolutely fair, and that's why so many people take the time to open source something. Because I'm sure if we had a Professor Xavier's hat that we could just listen to the entire world, I'm sure there's people that have done stuff like this in other projects in retro gaming that just don't share them because they're like, I don't have time to support people. I already work a crazy job. This was a fun hobby, but I don't have time. And they don't put it out there. So the fact that you do, and that there's other stores available to buy them, and there's communities that help support it, that's awesome for everybody. So thank everybody, I guess.
Yeah, everybody's awesome.
Yeah, mostly. Well, this was a whole lot of fun. I hope I wasn't too loopy. Anybody that's watched my interviews before could vouch that 2.5 beers isn't enough to get me tipsy, but 90-something degrees in the house. Yeah, I think I'm a little loopy right now. I think I'd have been drunk if I had water drinking the entire time just on that. So hopefully I wasn't too silly. But thank you. This was great. You were great.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much we all appreciate the work that goes into all of this stuff, and
I'm
the
glad
products
you can use
are
it.
awesome. So
yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, man. I will talk to you again probably next year when we finish some other crazy project that you came up with.
Would love to.